Welcome back to World Explorer. Did you know that in one part of Asia, a type of meat familiar to some Vietnamese people could land you a fine worth hundreds of millions of Vietnamese dong? And that's not all. There are funerals where crying isn't the only sound in the air. Families may hire dancers in flashy outfits, set up a stage, put on performances, and even bring in fleets of luxury cars. From the outside, a funeral procession can sometimes look almost like a festival. But even that isn't the most surprising secret that has put this island in the global spotlight. Because on an island covering just over 36,000 square kilometers, with around 23 million people, there's an industry so important that every major shift here can make the entire tech world hold its breath. It's also a place where women in eye-catching outfits stand beside brightly lit glass counters, simply to sell beer. And that's not all. Taiwan is home to such a large Vietnamese community that you can even stumble upon streets that feel unmistakably Vietnamese. From bun and pho to spring rolls, Vietnamese coffee, and even Vietnamese being taught in schools, you'll find it all in Taiwan. So what is Taiwan really like? Today, let's take a deeper look at life on this extraordinary island. And trust me, the more you explore, the more you realize Taiwan is nothing like what you might have imagined. You may have heard a lot about Taiwan, but what you know is probably just the tip of the iceberg. Behind the image of a small island lies one of the world's most formidable economies. Many people still view Taiwan as part of China, but people here see their homeland through a very different lens. They call it Taiwan, with its own system, government, currency, laws, and most importantly, its own identity. Economically, Taiwan doesn't need to show off. But behind that quiet confidence is some serious power. With a GDP per capita approaching $77,000 a year, that's more than 1.8 billion Vietnamese dong. Taiwan ranks among the world's wealthiest economies. But if you ever set foot in Taiwan, don't assume you can simply bring all your habits from home with you. Some things that seem completely normal back home can earn you very different looks from the locals. For example, dog meat is still part of the culinary culture for some people in Vietnam. But in Taiwan, you'd be better off leaving that idea behind entirely. Since 2017, Taiwan has strengthened animal protection laws and banned the consumption of dog and cat meat. Simply put, whether you like it or not is a personal choice, but once the law says no, don't risk it. The fines can be severe, while deliberate animal abuse or killing can lead to even more serious legal consequences. And this isn't just some law sitting on a piece of paper. There was even a case involving Vietnamese workers in Taiwan that drew significant attention within the Vietnamese community. It started with a dog and a single meal, and the final amount reportedly reached hundreds of millions of Vietnamese dong. One meal, but the bill was probably hard for anyone to swallow. So when you travel to another country, there's one simple rule to remember. Just because something is normal back home doesn't mean it's legal where you're going. Cultures may differ, but the law always deserves respect. And if you're heading to a birthday, a housewarming, or a business meeting, you might think a beautiful watch would make the perfect gift. Hold on. In Taiwan and many Chinese-speaking communities, giving someone a clock or watch can sometimes be considered bad luck. That's because the phrase for giving a clock or watch sounds similar to an expression associated with seeing off the dead. And when you add the symbolism of a watch, tied to the passing of time, that expensive gift suddenly takes on a very different meaning. Of course, not every young person today takes this tradition seriously. But if you don't know the recipient well, flowers, cake, perfume, or a souvenir are still safer choices. But if gift giving is already surprising enough, the next tradition is even more unusual: funerals in Taiwan. For most of us, a funeral is a solemn occasion. Family members wear mourning clothes, while guests come to offer condolences and say their final goodbyes. But within some communities in Taiwan, funeral traditions have included something that can leave foreigners completely stunned. It's the practice of hiring performers for the funeral. And in some cases, those performers have been female dancers in rather revealing outfits. You heard that right. There have been cases reported by the media where families hired performers because the deceased had enjoyed lively atmospheres and shows like these while they were alive. It may sound strange at first, but there's a very particular belief behind the tradition. The bigger and livelier the funeral, the more it shows how many people came to see the deceased off. It can bring energy to the ceremony while also serving as a display of the family's reputation and social standing. And some funerals have taken that idea to an entirely different level. There have been funeral processions featuring dozens of performers, long lines of vehicles, and crowds so massive that, from a distance, you might easily wonder, what kind of festival is happening here today? But no, they're attending a funeral, especially when it comes to funerals for influential figures or people with underworld connections. The scale can sometimes leave outsiders completely stunned. Luxury cars, heavy motorcycles, enormous floral wreaths, long processions, and crowds lining both sides of the streets. Some funerals have drawn thousands of people. From above, The scene can look more like a massive public event than the funeral procession we're used to seeing. But that very extravagance, along with the provocative performances, has sparked plenty of controversy and, at times, faced government crackdowns. And right after these extraordinary funerals, we encounter a completely different sight: the famous beetle nut beauties. In the middle of the night, a glass booth suddenly lights up, blue neon, red lights, and a bright glow spilling onto the street. Behind the glass stands a young woman with carefully done makeup, wearing a short skirt or an incredibly eye-catching outfit. If you didn't know what was going on, you might stop and wonder, wait, what kind of place is this? But what's being sold inside isn't mysterious at all. It's beetle nuts. Beetle nuts are nothing new to Vietnamese people. There's even an old saying: a beetle quid starts the conversation. But in Taiwan, the humble beetle nut has been given a completely different look, complete with neon lights, transparent glass booths, and a style of selling that people centuries ago could hardly have imagined. In Taiwan, beetle nuts became especially popular among some long-haul drivers, factory workers, and manual laborers. Chewing beetle nuts provides a stimulating effect and can help people stay alert for a short time. So along roads frequented by trucks, beetle nut stands began popping up everywhere. But then a problem emerged. One stand sold beetle nuts, and the next one did too. A few hundred meters down the road, there'd be another one. So how could a driver cruising at 60 kilometers per hour spot your stand and decide to pull over? Some business owners found the answer: make their stand impossible to ignore. The lights had to be bright, the booth had to stand out, and the seller had to become part of the attraction. That's how the famous beetle nut beauties became a phenomenon: women selling beetle nuts from glass booths. As the business model took off, some women were hired to stand inside roadside glass booths, with increasingly revealing outfits, all to grab the attention of passing drivers. From a business standpoint, the logic was pretty simple. The more attention you get, the more likely someone is to stop and make a purchase. But that approach also turned the beetle nut beauties into a controversial topic. Some see them as a uniquely Taiwanese part of street culture, while others see it simply as the commercialization of women's bodies. Others take a simpler view: it's just a job that pays the bills. Over time, the sight of women wearing highly revealing outfits in glass booths has become far less common. As society has changed, local regulations have evolved, and awareness of the health risks associated with beetle nut use has grown. Today, you're much less likely to see those scenes in central Taipei than in the viral photos that circulated years ago. But along some suburban roads, traces of Taiwan's beetle nut culture haven't disappeared completely. And those glass booths reveal a very different side of Taiwan from the Taipei 101 Tower or its semiconductor factories. On one side, you have some of the world's most advanced technology. On the other, a woman behind glass selling something people have chewed for centuries. Two worlds that seem completely opposite, yet coexist on the same island. But once night falls, Taiwan transforms even further. By day, Taipei makes you think of trains, offices, and orderly lines of people. But after dark, some neighborhoods seem to switch into an entirely different mode. Billboards light up, music spills out of storefronts, and the streets gradually come alive. Like many major cities around the world, Taipei also has areas associated with adult-oriented entertainment. What's interesting is that during the day, some of these alleys look completely ordinary. Shuttered metal doors, small signs, and rows of aging buildings packed tightly together. Especially at the funerals of influential figures or people with underworld connections, the scale can sometimes be absolutely overwhelming. Luxury cars, heavyweight motorcycles, enormous floral arrangements, long processions, and crowds packed along both sides of the road. Some funerals have attracted thousands of people. From above, the scene can look more like a massive public event than a traditional funeral procession. But that very extravagance, along with the provocative performances, has sparked plenty of controversy and, at times, government crackdowns. And right after these extraordinary funerals, we come across something completely different: Taiwan's famous beetle nut beauties. In the middle of the night, a glass booth suddenly lights up, blue neon, red lights, and a bright glow spilling onto the street. Behind the glass stands a young woman with carefully done makeup, wearing a short skirt or an incredibly eye-catching outfit. If you didn't know what was going on, you might wonder, wait, what kind of place is this? But what's being sold inside isn't mysterious at all. It's beetle nuts. Beetle nuts are nothing new to Vietnamese people. There's even an old saying: beetle starts the conversation. But in Taiwan, the humble beetle nut has been given a completely different look, complete with neon lights, transparent glass booths, and a style of selling that people centuries ago could hardly have imagined. In Taiwan, beetle nuts became especially popular among some long-haul drivers, factory workers, and manual laborers. Chewing beetle nuts provides a stimulating effect and can help people stay alert for a short time. so along roads frequented by trucks, betel nut stands began popping up everywhere. But then a problem emerged. One stand sold betel nuts, and the next one did too. A few hundred meters down the road, there'd be another one. So how could a driver cruising at 60 kilometers per hour spot your stand and decide to pull over? Some business owners found the answer. Make their stand impossible to ignore. The lights had to be bright, the booth had to stand out, and the seller had to become part of the attraction. That's how the famous betel nut beauties emerged, women selling betel nuts from glass booths. As the business model took off, some women were hired to stand inside roadside glass booths, wearing increasingly revealing outfits, all to grab the attention of passing drivers. From a business standpoint, the logic was pretty simple. The more attention you get, the more likely someone is to stop and make a purchase. But that approach also turned the betel nut beauties into a controversial topic. Some see them as a uniquely Taiwanese part of street culture, while others see it simply as the commercialization of women's bodies. Others take a simpler view. It's just a job that pays the bills. Over time, the sight of women wearing highly revealing outfits in glass booths has become far less common as society has changed. Local regulations have evolved, and awareness of the health risks associated with betel nut use has grown. Today, you're much less likely to see those scenes in central Taipei than in the viral photos that circulated years ago. But along some suburban roads, traces of Taiwan's betel nut culture haven't disappeared completely. And those glass booths reveal a very different side of Taiwan from Taipei 101 and its semiconductor factories. On one side, you have some of the world's most advanced technology. On the other, a woman behind glass selling something people have chewed for centuries. Two worlds that seem completely opposite, yet coexist on the same island. But once night falls, Taiwan transforms even further. By day, Taipei makes you think of trains, offices, and orderly lines of people. But after dark, some neighborhoods seem to switch into an entirely different mode. Billboards light up, music spills out of storefronts, and the streets gradually come alive. Like many major cities around the world, Taipei also has areas associated with adult-oriented entertainment. What's interesting is that during the day, some of these alleys look completely ordinary. Shuttered metal doors, small signs, and rows of aging buildings packed tightly together. A passing tourist might never realize how different these streets are from the neighborhoods around them. But once night falls, the lights come on, people start to appear, and another world slowly comes alive behind those seemingly ordinary streets. However, there's an important distinction to make here. Not everything you see is necessarily legal. Sex work in Taiwan is subject to specific legal regulations, and activities outside the permitted framework can lead to legal consequences. In particular, networks involving illegal migrant labor or human exploitation are not something to romanticize as some exotic part of the culture. Because behind the neon lights, there can sometimes be stories of money, migration, financial pressure, and people in extremely vulnerable situations. So we're not going to turn this into the usual. Come to Taiwan and treat it all like one big party. What's truly fascinating is how a single city can contain so many layers of life at once. Above you are the train tracks, on the street are convenience stores, and down the alleys is an entirely different nighttime economy. And there's another side of nightlife that sparks plenty of debate. Because in these entertainment districts, reality isn't always as glamorous as the travel videos make it look. On weekends, you might see people who've had a little too much to drink, some slumped over, others being helped home by their friends. And there have even been cases of young people falling asleep on the street after a night out. Yet what's interesting is that in a city this busy after dark, Taiwan is still widely regarded by travelers as a very safe place. And here's another surprise. Taiwan's vegetarian food scene is far more developed than many people realize. It's influenced by Buddhist traditions, folk beliefs, health concerns, and a growing number of people choosing plant-based foods for environmental or lifestyle reasons. If you're imagining vegetarian food as nothing more than boiled vegetables and tofu, Taiwan might completely change your mind. Some restaurants serve entire feasts featuring stir-fries, steamed dishes, hot pots, dumplings, buns, meat substitutes, and all kinds of desserts. Some dishes even look almost indistinguishable from real meat. Vegetarian restaurants also use different ingredients to accommodate different dietary needs. Some people avoid meat but still eat eggs and dairy. Others follow a fully vegan diet, while some also avoid certain seasonings for religious reasons. So checking the ingredients and dietary labels is pretty important. But if vegetarian food still isn't enough to challenge your taste buds, let's move on to something else. A dish that your nose might recognize before your eyes even get a chance. You're walking through a night market when suddenly, a very distinctive smell hits you. And chances are, you've just walked past a stall selling stinky tofu. The name doesn't exactly beat around the bush. The tofu is fermented to create its signature aroma, then prepared in a variety of ways. The most common version is deep fried, golden and crispy on the outside but still soft inside, then served with pickled vegetables, herbs, sauce, and sometimes chili sauce, depending on the place. For first-timers, the smell can be the first real challenge. Some people compare it to just about every unpleasant smell imaginable. But fans of the dish have a very simple response. Smelling it is one thing, eating it is another. And they're not wrong. Once the outside is fried until crispy, combined with the slight tang of pickled vegetables and the sauce, the actual flavor can be completely different from what your nose warned you about. But if stinky tofu only challenges your nose, the next dish might confuse you from the name alone. It's coffin bread. No, I didn't make that name up just for the clickbait. It's actually a famous dish from Taiwan, commonly known as coffin bread. Once you hear the name, you might think, eat it and you're done for? Thankfully, it's not that dramatic. It's actually a thick slice of bread that's fried or toasted until crisp. The center is hollowed out, then filled with a hot, savory filling. The filling can include meat, seafood, vegetables, and a rich, creamy sauce. Finally, another piece of bread goes on top like a lid. Its boxy shape resembles a coffin, and that's how the bizarre name came about. But coffin bread isn't even the biggest star of the night market, because right up ahead, a giant griddle is sizzling away. The vendor drops fresh oysters onto the griddle, followed by eggs, a layer of batter, and fresh greens. Everything slowly comes together into a golden, crispy pancake. That's Taiwan's famous oyster omelet. But you can't talk about Taiwan without mentioning another essential piece of the puzzle, bubble tea. Bubble tea is the drink that traveled from Taiwan to the rest of the world. Tea, milk, sugar, and chewy tapioca pearls sitting at the bottom of the cup. It sounds simple enough, but what started as a local drink has become a global phenomenon. But after all the foods we've just explored, we still haven't reached the part that's likely to feel most familiar to Vietnamese viewers. Because once you leave the famous night markets and head into areas filled with workers and immigrant communities, the scenery starts to change. A sign appears, pho. A few steps later, bun bo. Across the street, there's spring rolls, bon quan, and then Vietnamese coffee. You look up. The signs are still in Chinese, and the scooters still have Taiwanese license plates. But suddenly you hear a familiar voice. Sis, can I get a kilo of this? That's when it really hits you. You're thousands of miles from Vietnam. Yet for a few seconds, it feels like you've just stepped into a market back home. Vietnamese people have come to Taiwan through many different paths. Some came for work, some for school, some through marriage, while others stayed for just a few years before returning to Vietnam. But some have stayed for 10 or 20 years, raised families, opened businesses, and gradually made Taiwan a second home. But the story of the Vietnamese community in Taiwan has brought about an even bigger change. Decades of cross-border marriages have created a generation of young people with roots in Southeast Asia. Some were born and raised in Taiwan, speaking Chinese from childhood and studying in Taiwanese schools. But at home, they hear their mothers speaking Vietnamese. Starting in the 2019 school year, Taiwan's updated education program expanded the teaching of languages spoken by new immigrant communities, including Vietnamese. To Vietnamese people, they're just everyday words that hardly seem worth noticing. But hearing a child thousands of miles from Vietnam speak Vietnamese somehow feels completely different. And yet, there's something else that has truly put Taiwan on the world's radar. It's in an industry most of us barely notice in our daily lives: semiconductors. Taiwan is one of the world's most important semiconductor manufacturing hubs. The standout player is TSMC, a company that manufactures chips based on designs created by other technology companies. A company can design an incredibly powerful processor, but turning that design into millions of physical chips using cutting-edge processes is an entirely different challenge. A semiconductor factory isn't something you can build today and have running tomorrow just because you have the money. It takes technology, equipment, engineers, supply chains, ultra-precise processes, and years of accumulated experience. Because in this world, even a tiny speck of dust in the wrong place can become a major problem. That's why there's a popular saying: if Taiwan sneezes, the global tech industry might be reaching for a tissue. Now imagine a major crisis disrupting chip production and shipping in Taiwan. What happens next? Smartphone supplies could be hit, computers could be affected, and even servers and data centers could feel the impact. Even modern cars, which rely on hundreds or even thousands of semiconductor components, could be affected. And today's booming artificial intelligence industry depends even more heavily on advanced chips. That's why Taiwan matters not only geopolitically, but also plays a critical role in global technology and the economy. It's not a particularly large island, yet it sits at a point that countless global supply chains simply can't afford to ignore. And it's precisely because of that powerful industrial base that Taiwan has come such a long way. If today's journey has given you a new perspective on Taiwan, Be sure to subscribe to World Explorer because the world is full of famous destinations. But sometimes, the most fascinating things are the ones nobody tells you about until you actually get there. And for now, goodbye, and I'll see you again on the next journey with World Explorer.